Chapter 20. Merribeth. Lucas, come on! Merribeth could not believe it was almost time for the parade. The last few days had been so busy that she and Lucas had just stayed at the hotel, even though the locksmith had dropped off her new set of keys yesterday. However, she really needed her Christmas dress, as well as a more Christmassy outfit for Lucas. Chance had graciously offered to let her off a little early to swing by her house and grab what she needed. And since she'd finally gotten her car back from the shop, she was ready to check on her house. "Sorry, Mommy," Lucas said, popping up from behind the bed. "I thought I lost my shoe again." He offered a lopsided smile as he held it up. Merribeth simply shook her head. Though things had gotten lost less often in the hotel room, somehow he'd still managed to lose a glove, a hat, and almost his jacket once. Thankfully, Tiffany had found that near a tree. While the glove and hat were an annoyance to have to replace, the jacket would have been spendier. With his shoe securely on, Merribeth ushered him out of the room and down to the parking lot. 10 minutes later, she pulled into her driveway. The locksmith had said nothing about the house looking ransacked, and there had been no one there the day she had grabbed her things with Chance. But her heart still thudded a little faster in her chest as she turned off the engine. Work, staying at the hotel, and being around Chance had silenced her fears the last few days. But now they clawed their way to the front again. Would she ever feel safe in her house again? "Are we going in, Mommy?" Lucas asked from the back seat. Merribeth shook her head to clear the thoughts. "Yep, sorry, buddy." As she stepped out of the car, she sent up a prayer that the house would be safe. Her eyes darted from side to side as they approached the front door, but she was proud to see her hand shake only slightly as she inserted the key. The new lock was a little sticky, but she finally felt it disengage, and she pushed the door open. Her body relaxed as no one came running at them. In fact, the house looked exactly as it had the last time. "Lucas, I want you to go change into your green shirt and your dark pants. You don't need to worry about anything else because we'll be coming home tomorrow." Lucas's face fell. "Does that mean I'll have to go back to Miss Edith's next week?" "We'll talk about it later." Merribeth didn't want to have to take him back to Edith's either, especially since his slot in the new place would open in a week and a half. She was secretly hoping she could work out a deal with Chance and keep bringing him to the hotel. But she hadn't had that conversation yet, and she didn't want to get his hopes up. "Okay." His response lacked enthusiasm, but she couldn't blame him. He'd been so much happier the last few days with Tiffany. Getting him out of the current situation was definitely needed. As Lucas headed to his room, Merribeth cautiously checked the rest of the house before entering her room to change. She wished she had time for a shower, but her one from this morning would have to do. Peeling off her work clothes, she opened her closet and pulled out the long-sleeved velvet green dress she had purchased a few years back, specifically for Christmas time. She did wear it occasionally through January, but mostly it was a December-only dress, and one Chance had never seen. Heat spread across her cheeks even though there was no one around to see it. She shouldn't be thinking about Chance in those terms, but it was hard not to. He'd done so much for her in the last 2 weeks. Besides, as his assistant, she needed to look nice. After zipping up the dress, she grabbed her dangly red and white stocking earrings and her stretchy present charm bracelet from their nearly year-round home in her small jewelry box. With her ensemble complete, she checked her appearance in the mirror. At least her makeup had held up relatively well. A light application of a red lipstick would finish her look. "Lucas, you ready?" Merribeth called out as she checked her watch. They had half an hour until the parade officially started, but she wanted to be there early enough to make sure it was all a go before enjoying the sights and sounds. "Coming, Mommy." Lucas appeared a moment later with his green dress shirt on, though not buttoned quite right. "Here, let me fix that for you." Merribeth quickly adjusted the buttons, tucked in the small tail in the back that had been hanging lower than the rest, and deemed him ready to go. He'd probably have the shirt untucked 5 minutes into the parade anyway, as he ran forward to grab candy. Oh, the candy! He would need something to hold it in. "Wait here." She dashed into the kitchen, where she kept plastic bags and the few tote bags she'd acquired over the years. There was a Christmas one somewhere with a giant green tree on it. Her mother had used it as a gift bag for one of Lucas's gifts last year, and while Merribeth had thought it strange at the time, it would suit her purpose perfectly tonight. "What's that for?" Lucas asked as she handed him the bag. "That is for all the candy they throw at the parade. Don't you remember last year?" His eyes grew wide, and he clutched the bag tightly to his chest. "I get to get candy?" "Yes, but you will not be eating it all tonight. It will be doled out like at Halloween." Merribeth loved taking her son around at Halloween, but keeping him from devouring so much candy that his belly ached was easier said than done. The first year had been easy. He'd been 1 and not old enough for candy, so Merribeth had eaten it. At 2 and 3, he'd asked for more than the 2 pieces she allowed him, but had promptly forgotten about the candy the next day. She'd been able to use it as a treat for months after that. But 2 Halloweens ago, when he'd been 4, was when things had gotten interesting. She'd thought that telling him to stay out of the candy would be enough, and she'd left it on the bar before going to bed that night. However, the next morning he'd complained his tummy hurt, and she'd found at least 10 candy wrappers shoved under his bed. From then on, the candy had been hidden away at the top of the pantry where he couldn't reach it. He shrugged. "That's okay with me. This is going to be so much fun." Yes, it is, she thought, as she followed him out to the car. She loved the annual parade, but this would be the first time in a long time that she wouldn't be attending it alone. Of course, she and Chance weren't anything official yet, but he'd already said he wanted to date her again. She'd put it off to give herself time to think, but being so close to him the last few days had only reminded her how much she cared about him. As she buckled Lucas into his seat, a chill ran down her spine, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. There'd been no sound, no indication that something was wrong, but suddenly Merribeth felt as if someone was watching her. She closed Lucas's door and glanced around, but no eyes stared back at her, and nothing jumped out at her. Her mind was playing tricks on her. That was all. But for the first time since she'd heard someone had been watching Lucas, she wished Colin would just approach her and get it over with.